Okay, so Shalom Aleichem, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to Machin Leira on my smicha to make the official entrance. We're learning Siman Kuf Yud Ches Yeridea, where it talks about when you could trust the packaging of the food. Actually, it's not even for food. Anything that needs a hechsher. Today's days, all those people who are shopping for Pesach, there are so many other items that have hechsher. I see now they have new things, sticky paper, contact paper that people want to cover the counters. They have it with a hechsher to make sure. I don't know what to make sure. What they might have put in there to make sure it's not chametz stick. Or they even have for washing clothing. They have has a hechsher. Soaps, okay, so you're saying for Pesach, people go above and beyond. But there's a lot of shopping going on, and you have to have confidence that what you buy is actually the product that was labeled Taka Kosher. So in Siman Kuf Yud Ches, we have our guidelines when you could trust what the package says it really is that item as it left the plant where it was made. And actually a very important halacha is in Siman Kuf Yud Ches Seif Beis, that which says if it was done properly, if in the plant it was supervised by a kosher organization and they know how the packaging should be made. What does it mean? They know how the packaging should be made. They either followed the rule of chaysam echad or shtei chaysames. They knew when you need 2 seals and when you need 1 seal. Just by the fact that they did the right job, when you're approving this organization, saying that they know that they're doing and they let it go after such packaging, then you don't have to worry anymore. In Sif Beis it says, Kivon she'echtimoi karoi, if they sealed it properly, either shtei chaysames in those items that need shtei chaysames, or chaysam echad, those items that need chaysam echad, don't have to go follow up. Was it tampered with? No, because the whole chaysam is to deter, is to push away a person from wanting to challenge it, from wanting to tamper with it. We really believe in our system. We believe in our system so much that the chaysam echad, when chaysam echad is sufficient, or when shnei chaysamis is sufficient, we are confident that if we did our part, leaving the food go, it wasn't tampered. You don't have to go double check on it. Okay? That is the first couple of seifim. Talk about when you need chaysam echad, when you need shtei chaysamis. I actually want to talk about Siman Kuf Yud Ches, Seif, Hey, and Vav. We're going to concentrate on that. That is not so famous. There is a story in the Gemara. The Gemara in Bava Metzia, Daf Chav Gimel Amid Beis writes that Rabba, when he would send from the sheichet, maybe he shechted himself or whatever, when Rabba would send home chicken or meat that was just freshly shechted, he didn't necessarily send it with a fruma yid. He sent it with maybe even a guy to deliver the food, to deliver the fresh chicken. So how did he allow that a guy was a middleman, a delivery, to deliver the fresh shecht piece of meat or chicken? So what Rabbi did, he mechatech la atlasa karnata. He would cut the meat a certain shape, triangle or whatever shape he tried. He cut the meat, and therefore, by making a siman in his cut, it was obvious that when it got there, as I mentioned before, nobody would tamper it. It looks like a strange cut, so no guy would swap it as much as he would like a piece of corned beef. He would like a piece of kosher meat, but because it's cut special, that's a siman muvik, and that will deter the guy from tampering or swapping it. That's a Gemara. What does that Gemara help us for our halacha? in Siman Kuf Yud Ches Siv Hey. As I mentioned before, we were speaking about Siman Shtei Choisam Echad Shtei Choisamis. There is another concept. There's other ways how Goyim will be deterred. Like the Gemara says, a certain cut, expert, a special cut, will deter a guy from tampering it. So in Sif Hey he says, in Shalach al Yidei Ovi Gechavim Yerech Beloi Choisim. Yerech is a thigh of an animal. Rabbi Yaakov would remember that not too long ago, when you go to the butcher, you didn't have everything ready, cut steaks. You would go to the butcher and you would buy a zaitel, a ganze zaitel, a whole thigh of an animal, and you would have to cut it down into pieces. So what happens if the shochet shechted an animal and he dissected it into bigger parts? Obviously, there are certain things that are done to kosher animals. What's done to a kosher animal? We're not allowed to have chaylev. So because by a goyish animal, there's much more meat to be sold. Though it's much fattier because they're allowed to eat it. We have a lot of body parts that the Torah prohibits. So the question is, the yid, the shochet, shechted the animal. Now there's a zaitel, a whole thigh of an animal, a zaitel. But you could tell in the cut that a yid was involved. Why? Because one of the things that we're not allowed to eat is the gid anasha, the sciatic nerve. And it's cut around there that you could see that it's a Yiddish animal. Doesn't sound good when you say Yiddish animal, right? It's a Yiddish shechted animal. Since it's post-Purim, even though this shir is being recorded forever and ever, so I'll tell you a Purim joke. What is a bacher? Why is a youngster, a yeshiva bacher, called bacher? Okay, so if you want to give him a boost, you say bacher means chosen, and they're chosen to be there. But there's a old Yiddish folk talk that says bacher is a Rosh Tevis. Beis, Ches, Vav, Reish. Those 4 letters are Rosh Tevis, an acronym. Chaya, Ra, Vidar, Yeshiva. A wild animal that's contained in a building, in a yeshiva. Now, okay, so that's why I got to this, because of the Jewish wild animal. Okay, Jewish animal. All right. So let's go back to this halacha. If you didn't seal it, you didn't stamp it, you didn't package it with a seal, but you're relying maybe, if the piece of meat is cut like the Jews cut it, achar chatitas hagid, because we remove the gid hanasha, or the same would be if there are certain body parts, certain parts that the goyim sell as a luxury, certain fatty parts that we don't eat. And if you could see it was cut around, ksheira. That will be enough to prove that it wasn't tampered with. Why? They used the Gemara I started with, the Gemara in Baba Metzia, that if a professional cut, a siman muvik, is good enough, which is a very big chiddush. Because, in other words, obviously the guy didn't cut it, because why would he take out the Giranasha? Why would he take out everything is money? From the other hand, how does it stem that we learned earlier that meat is one of those things that needs shtei chaysamis? One chaysam is not good enough. Yet, a siman muvak will pass as good as shtei chaysamis. V'chein, or kol chaticha shenikar ba nikar hayisrael, any piece of meat that you could tell there was nikur Yisrael. Rabbi Yankel will tell you, nikur means treiberin. Treiberin means the chaylev was removed. A guy doesn't have to remove so much chaylev. It's fatty. It's part of what they sell. If you see the chaylev was removed, then that will also be considered a good enough siman to say that it's kosher. It wasn't tampered with. First of all, you have to read deep into these words in the Mechaber. The Mechaber says, Im shalach. Im shalach means if it was sent. Lechatchila to rely on this, is that an option or it's only b'di'evid? So the Shach addresses this. The Shach in Chav Gimel, Sifkat Chav Gimel addresses this. And he says, Miloshen zeh mashma. From the expression of the Mechaber, it's mashma. Dafka di'evid. Only if it happened, it was sent that way. Have a nikar kiyotze by simin. Avaloi lechatchila. But to lechatchila, to rely on this, if you want to send meat, you have to have a better siman than this. Now, even though the Gemara, as I started with, said the story that Rabbi Babachana relied on this, still, that's according to the Mechaber, according to the Shach, it's only b'di'evid. So now, the Ramah goes on to bring, if this was being delivered in a Goyish delivery truck. So you have not only this piece of meat, you have other pieces of meat. The fact that one piece of meat has a siman that we can rely on, does it say that nothing else in the refrigerator truck was tampered? Or it's only that one is kosher? So the Ramah goes on to say, Usha'ar hachaticha she'imayim. However, the other pieces of meat, other steaks in the truck, if you have any worry that he might have swapped it for his non-kosher, then it's not allowed. Because I only have a siman on this piece, on this zaitel. And he goes on to make a difference between an Isser D'Oraisa and an Isser D'Rabbanan. Maybe by an Isser D'Rabbanan, once we have a siman on some things, the whole delivery truck becomes mutter. By Isser D'Oraisa, I want to be more machmer. Move on to Sivav. Shalach al yidei oiv gechavim behema oiv shchutim. What would be the din? Now I must go further. I must add the last two words in the Mechaber and Sif Hey. He says this is not only for meat. If the cut you could tell is a kosher cut, he adds the words ukayoytzaboy or anything like that. What would kayoytzaboy add? So I did see, let's say gefilte fish. The guy make gefilte fish. Take a food item. What are you coming with the? I'm bringing you that the Beis Yosef brings the Pri Chodesh and Sifkat Mem Aleph says that any Michael that Goyim don't usually make, or if they make it, but they don't make it nothing like us, you could rely on the Michael itself to be a siman. Now, I was trying to make this a practical thing. Gefilte fish, pcha. What do they call it? What's the other word for pcha? Gala. They don't know how to make it. They don't make it. Yapchik. According to this, it looks like that b'di'evid, these items wouldn't need, if it looks like a zaftik, a yapchik, if it looks like, I don't want to pass them that way. L'chatchila for sure, you're not allowed to. But b'di'evid, if a guy delivers a gefilte fish, not a salmon, a guy versteht a gefilte fish, how would it be different than a piece of meat that was cut like a Yiddish cut? So they bring taka from the Pri Chodesh and Sifkat and Mem Aleph that Yiddish food that goyim have no understanding in it, maybe you don't have to be chayish that the goy swapped it and replaced it with his gefilte fish. My friend, his gefilte fish that wouldn't look anything like ours. That's pushing it, but at least you should know there's a reason for this. So let's move on to Sivav. Shalach al yidei oiv gechavim behema oiv shchutim. If you just told me a cut is a simin, how about the shchita? The goyim shoot their animals. I don't know how the goyim do it to the chickens. Maybe they just break off the head. I don't know. But if you went to the shaychet and the shaychet shechted the animal or shechted the chicken, could you just pass on? Could you send that dead chicken that was shechted back home to do whatever is needed, because the shchita is a cut. Says the Mechaber, the shchita cut ain't simin shchita simin lismach. That's not strong enough to rely on. That's not like the cut in the meat where you cut around the chalev over there. That's an expert cut. That's a Jewish thing. But how they kill the animal, how they kill the chicken, maybe they killed it that way, and therefore that would not be considered a siman to rely on and say it's kosher. So here would be an interesting shaila. The interesting shaila is, what would be the din if somebody takes a live animal or a live bunch of chickens and tells his goyish helper, do me a favor, walk this animal, take this box of chickens and go across the street to the rabbi, the shaychet, and let him shecht it. So now the guy takes the animal or the chicken across the street, and guess what? He comes back 20 minutes later with a bunch of dead chickens, an animal that's shechted. Based on this halacha, would you be able to trust the guy? He went with live chickens, he went with a live animal, he comes back with a dead animal. And you see that it's shechted. So the shach brings in Sif Katan Chav Hey, when he says that shchita is not considered a siman, he says, the chicken looks dead. The chicken looks shechted. Who shechted it? Says the shach, hatam, shema hichlifa evigechavim toiv berah. Maybe the guy swapped the good for the bad one. The shachat ba'atzmai, and he shechted himself. Why would he shecht himself? Because like this, he kept the money. Let's say the yid gave him, says, here's $20, bring the chickens to the shaychet, the shaychet will shecht it. So he went on the way and he killed it himself. Or whatever reason. The siman of the shchita is not big enough a siman to prove it wasn't done by the guy. Unless, the only way around this is, unless the shaychet, it just happened, and the shaychet comes into the house and says, I shechted it. Even if the shaychet can't see in the cut, but if it just happened, the shaychet says, I shechted it, according to the Achrayim, that would be a good enough siman.